Hey everyone, it's Mostly Casual Commander. I'm BK. We're on Discord and Patreon. Links are in the description. Kyle brought his Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow deck. Hard to block ninjas are going to help him drain his opponents out all at the same time. I'm playing Braids, Arisen Nightmare. Braids will give me an edge against my opponents by reaping benefits from sacrificing my own stuff. Busterkins is playing Sheoldred, the Apocalypse. He's going to punish us for drawing cards, so he's going to make us draw more cards. Simple as that. And J-Man is playing Kaalia of the Vast, so when she attacks, he'll be able to cheat out angels, demons, and dargons. Watch the whole video for an appearance from my fat cat Meatball. He's so chunky. I have to say, he's so chunky. Again, because I forgot to last video. Kyle plays an island and a universal automaton, which is a ninja if you didn't know. On my turn, I drop a swamp and play a soul ring. On turn 1, no big deal. On Busterkin's turn, he copies me by also playing a swamp, which I find insulting. He passes the turn over to J-Man, who played a mountain, and then passes back to Kyle, who also plays a swamp. I feel like we're going to say swamp a lot in this game. Kyle attacks me with Automaton. He ninjutsus out Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow, bouncing Automaton back to his hand. Yuriko hits me for 1. He'll reveal the top card of his library and drain his opponents equal to the mana value.
And everyone takes
Nothing.
0. Yeah!
Yay!
So that'll spare us some life lost, but he still gets that card to his hand. On my turn, I play a swamp, and then cast Falkenroth Noble. Hopefully I can kill a lot of creatures and drain my opponents. On Busterkin's turn, another swamp hits his board, followed by a Thought Vessel before he passes the turn over to J-Man. He plays a swamp as well, and then he casts Talisman of Hierarchy. Turn 2 mana ramp, not bad. On Kyle's turn, he draws and plays that Morphic Pool that we saw last turn. That'll enter untapped, of course. He moves into combat at Busterkins with Yuriko, pinging him 1 point of life, revealing the top card of his library, and draining all of his opponents 1 due to that Pongify. As a follow-up, he'll recast his Universal Automaton before casting
Cover of Darkness. My things are scary, which means they can't be blocked except by artifacts or black creatures.
Hey!
Which is great against the 2 mana black decks.
I think we have a strict advantage here. Then he casts Ornithopter for free. It's free because the mana value is 0. Then on my turn, I cast my commander, Braids, Arisen Nightmare, after playing a land for turn. I move to combat and give Kyle some payback with a 2/2. He drops to 38, and then I move to end step where Braids will trigger. In this case, I'm going to sacrifice a land. So we'll go around the table. Busterkins did not sacrifice a land, so he lost 2 life, and I drew a card. Same with J-Man. And Kyle, not being a coward, just sacks a land. Then onto Busterkin's turn, he plays a swamp, and then casts his commander, Sheoldred, the Apocalypse. So whenever he draws, he'll gain life. Whenever opponents draw, they'll lose life. J-Man starts his turn, drawing and dropping to 35. He plays a Plains, and then he casts his commander as well, Kaalia of the Vast. So he'll start cheating out some big scary things whenever he attacks. On to Kyle's turn, he loses some life when he draws, and then he'll cast Pongify on Sheoldred. He likes to draw cards, so Sheoldred gets blown up, but Busterkins gets a 3/3 ape. Can you believe it? With Sheoldred dying, my Falkenroth Noble triggered, and I'll point that 1 point of life lost to Kyle, and I'll gain 1 life in the process. Following that, Kyle sends his creatures to the red zone, attacking me with Ornithopter, and ninjutsuing out Ninja of the Deep Hours in its place, seeing as I couldn't block it. Busterkin's ape couldn't block the other 2 because of fear. So Busterkins and I will both take a couple points of life, and Yuriko will have 3 triggers. She reveals Higer, the Still Wind. Is it Higer? It might be Higer. Also an island, and also a Shizo, Death Storehouse. So all of Kyle's opponents will lose 5 life. He gets all those cards to hand, as well as a card draw, thanks to Ninja of the Deep Hours. Then he recasts his Ornithopter before passing to me. On my turn, I drop a swamp, and then I cast an early Grey Merchant of Asphodel, aka Gary. He'll see my devotion equals 5, so I'll drain all of my opponent's 5 life, and then I'll gain life equal to that lost, so 15 comes my way. I move to combat, again attacking Kyle for 2 points with my Falkenroth Noble. On my end step, I sacrifice my Gary, thanks to Braids, and this will also trigger Falkenroth Noble. We go around the table again. Busterkin sacks his ape, J-Man takes 2, so I draw, and Kyle kills his Ornithopter, so sadly I don't draw there either. But I do have a total of 3 Falkenroth triggers that I pointed at Kyle. On Busterkin's turn, he plays a swamp, followed by a Cryptghast. I like Cryptghast, like a lot. It's one of my favorite cards in Magic, I think. Then he casts Demonic Tutor, so he goes and finds the best card in his deck, presumably. Over to J-Man, he plays an Isolated Chapel, entering the battlefield untapped. Then he'll hardcast Lyra, Dawnbringer. He's not cheating that one out. I think he's got another plan. When he attacks me with Kaalia, he cheats out Avacyn, Angel of Hope. This is going really well. So things got out of hand very fast, thanks to J-Man. I dropped to 39 and he gains some life back up to 32 before passing over to Kyle. He drops another swamp as his land for turn before moving into combat at the now very scaring and intimidating J-Man. He can't block thanks to Cover of Darkness, so he drops to 28, and Kyle will reveal the top 3 cards of his library thanks to Yuriko. It's a Grim Hireling, a Fairy Seer, and a Submerge, so we all lose 10 life, which is not nothing. He puts all those cards to his hand, draws from his Ninja of the Deep Hours, and then he casts Fairy Seer, scrying 2, keeping 1 on top and 1 on the bottom. After that, a Baleful Strix will enter the battlefield, drawing him another card. And with his impressive board state growing, he passes the turn over to me. I play a High Market as my land for turn. This could sacrifice one of my creatures at instant speed. Following that, I cast Massacre Worm because I need to clear up my opponent's boards a little bit.
I thought you said you liked the Cryptcast.
I do. I like Cryptcast an awful lot, but only when it's on my side of the board. Otherwise, it's not good for anybody.
It's good for me.
Well, sorry, Busterkins. If I can't have Cryptcast out, then nobody can. So Massacre Worm says, yo, shrink all of your opponent's creatures -2/-2. This results in multiple creatures dying, and for every creature that's dying, its controller will lose 2 life. So this will drain out my opponents a little bit, as well as have 6 Falkenrath Noble triggers on the stack, which I'll aim all of them at Kyle. Now, like an idiot, I forgot to gain my life off of that. But these things happen, and it did not impact the outcome of the game. On my end step, Braids will trigger, and I decide to sacrifice a land. Busterkins says no, and he'll drain 2 more life and let me draw a card. J-Man sacks a land, and Kyle sacks a land. Then I pass a turn, and Busterkins drops a swamp. And then he recasts his commander, Sheoldred, the Apocalypse. So he's putting more pressure on all of us, seeing as our life totals are getting pretty low. J-Man doesn't like that too much, so on his turn he'll draw, loses 2 life, and play a swamp for turn before moving into the red zone and knocking Busterkins out of the game with enough airborne damage to kill him dead. Sorry, Busterkins. J-Man gains a bunch of life thanks to Lyra being out, giving lifelink to his angels. Then he casts Liliana's Contract as a follow-up. This will have him lose 4 more life after he draws 4 cards. It's not a bad rate. In addition, if J-Man ends up having 4 different named demons out, he can win the game that way. That's cool. On Kyle's turn, he plays Underground River as his land before casting Grim Hireling. So he's hoping to start generating some treasure tokens and have some onboard removal as well. He attacks J-Man with Yuriko, who can't block, so he'll gain 2 treasures from Grim Hireling, as well as reveal a Mox Amber off the top. Unfortunately, that's a 0, so we don't take any life loss. He gains his 2 treasures before he casts said Mox Amber for free, because it's 0. Then, using some of those treasures, he will activate Grim Hireling, which kills my Falkenrath Noble, and allows me to drain J-Man 1 and gain a life from it. Kyle passed the turn to me. I draw and drop a swamp as my land for turn, and then I cast Plague Crafter. So each of my opponents will have to sack a creature. I choose Plague Crafter to be sacrificed. J-Man kills his Lyra, Dawnbringer, which triggers Massacre Worm, draining him 2, and Kyle sacks his Grim Hireling, also draining him 2. Then I cast Animate Dead, targeting Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This was my plan all along. But in response to me casting Animate Dead, Kyle casts Deadly Rollick, exiling my Massacre Worm. He does this because he's a Rudy McBooty, number 1. Number 2, it significantly reduces my devotion that Gary sees when he enters the battlefield. Nevertheless, I drain my opponents a bunch, dropping J-Man to 15, Kyle to 4, and gaining me life back up to 40. I move Braids into the red zone, attacking Kyle, dropping him to a very safe and secure 1. On my end step, I'll sacrifice another land. J-Man decides to sack a land, as does Kyle. I thought about if there was a better thing to sacrifice, but I couldn't really see it at the time. I don't know, was there something else I should have sacrificed? On J-Man's turn, he played a mountain before swinging Avacyn at me, dropping me to 32, and then he casts Darn It. We keep it PG around here, people. That was on Overload, so everything dies except for J-Man's Avacyn, because it has Indestructible. Then he passes the turn over to Kyle, while I remind myself of J-Man's Liliana's Contract. Kyle plays Shizo, Death's Storehouse, before doing this.
Yeah, I think we're at that point.
Unfortunate. Kyle's at the point where after multiple board wipes, he has to hard cast Yuriko. Then he passes the turn over to me, I play another Swamp, and then I cast Solemn Simulacrum, the saddest of robots. This will have me go and fetch up a Swamp, entering the battlefield tapped before passing over to J-Man. And on his turn, he plays a Bajuka Bog. This will, rightly so, exile my entire graveyard, which makes me sad because I like to reanimate things in this deck. Then he casts Vengeful Reaper, a flying, death-touchy, hasty flyer that can fly and has haste. But he chooses to keep it back on defense after him and Kyle talk about taking me down first. I am insulted. Not really. I go to 24 and J-Man passes the turn to Kyle, who plays a swamp as his land, before casting Temporal Mastery. This will give him a whole extra turn. He has no attacks with Yuriko, so he just passes the turn back to himself. He draws and plays another swamp before casting Higer, the Still Wind. Again, a hard cast, as opposed to ninjutsuing it out, based off of his situation. He'll use Higer's activated ability to make Yuriko unblockable. He'll ping me for 1 and reveal a Moon Circuit Hacker off the top of his library, draining me and J-Man for 2, before adding that card to his hand. Following that, he'll pass the turn back over to me. I draw, and then I play a swamp as my land for turn, before casting Sheoldred, Whispering One, not the Apocalypse. This one's much quieter.
I can return a creature from my exiled graveyard
Nice,
onto the
dude.
battlefield. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that's the important part, you guys gotta sack a creature.
No, not as nice, dude.
Yeah.
I pass, and then on his upkeep, J-Man sacks his creature, and Kyle figures out a plan.
What if I skip my upkeep?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, have you thought of that?
Nope.
Exactly.
J-Man then plays a Needle Verge Pathway as his land for turn, and with that out, he'll cast Bruna, the Fading Light. This thing can bring back an angel or a human from his graveyard to the battlefield. He finds Lyra, Dawnbringer again. My sadness hits the stack as he moves into combat with Avacyn, smacks me with Avacyn, dropping me to 12. He'll go to 22, and then on Kyle's upkeep,
Trigger.
In response to the trigger, I'm gonna tap a Mox Amber and a Swamp to activate Higer targeting himself.
then Sheoldred's ability will resolve. He'll sacrifice Yuriko, he'll draw for turn and move right into combat at J-Man with Higer, and because it's unblockable, he will ninjutsu out Yuriko, pinging J-Man for 1, and then revealing the top card of his library. In this case, it's Arcane Adaptation, so he'll drain 3 points from each of his opponents and put that into his hand. As a follow-up play, he'll cast Triton Shorestalker. And then he passes over to me. On my upkeep, Sheoldred's trigger doesn't have a target because I didn't sacrifice my sad robot with my high marker like I should have. I can see that clearly now. I move right into the red zone with Sheoldred and attack J-Man with Swamp Walk, dropping him to 12. Then pass the turn to him. On his upkeep, he sacrifices Lyra and casts Lightning Helix on Kyle. This is enough to drop him out of the game. Following that, J-Man moves into the red zone with his 2 creatures, dealing me enough damage to knock me out of the game as well. This makes J-Man the winner. Congratulations, buddy. Job well done piloting your angel-focused Kaalia of the Vast deck. And here's Meatball. He's so chunky. And there's my 30-pound cat in my refrigerator. Listen, we adopted him that way, so. We hope you enjoyed the game. Please let us know what you thought about it in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching.